Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. My name is Liam Kilby. I'm the Associate Director for the MBA Recruitment and Admissions team here at Oxford Said. I'm just going to wait for a few minutes while the room fills. I can see the participant number is growing, so just bear with me for a little while to make sure we get everybody into the session before we get started. Just while the room is filling, if people can just let me know, maybe in the chat box, that they can hear me okay, they can see me okay. You should be able to see my screen that I'm sharing. If you can't hear me or hear what I'm saying, you wouldn't know what to put in the chat box. That seems like a strange question. But if someone can just maybe drop a yes, we can hear you into the chat box, that would be really helpful for me. Thank you. Someone's done it in the Q&A. That's perfect. Even better. Let's talk about the Q&A box. Guys, there will be time for questions at the end of this session. So don't wait until the end to send them through, but please do use that Q&A box to send your questions through. We'll try and get through as many of them as we can in the time that we have. What I would say is, if possible, please keep those questions fairly general about the scholarship, about the funding opportunity, about the process, how do you apply. We probably won't have the ability to address very individual specific questions on this webinar about your own specific profile, your own background. It might be quite tricky to get to that on this level, but send the questions through as and when they come to you. If we're on a slide and you have a question about that slide, we'll try and get to it straight away, but if not, we'll try and pick it up at the end. And let me just take a moment here to introduce my colleague, Claire, if you'd like to join us on screen for a moment, please. Claire is the Senior Programs Manager for Networks and Partnerships. Claire, would you like to talk a little bit about your role you have at the school here, please?
Yeah, thanks, Liam, and hi, everyone. It's great to be speaking to you all. Like Liam said, I'm part of the Skoll Centre team here at the business school, and my role is to work with the many affiliates, scholars, alumni, students who are all part of the Skoll Centre in some way. And a huge part of my role is managing the Skoll Scholarship, which I am going to talk about a little bit as part of this session and give you a little bit more information there. But I manage the scholarship program, and I work with the scholars when they're in residence with us in Oxford, and then I curate the scholar alumni community once the MBA year is over as well. So I know many of the scholars very well, and I will tell you more in this time together now.
Thank you, Claire. We've had a question come through already, which I'll take. It's a very quick question. The question is a scholarship linked to a specific college? The answer is no. You will be able to be a member of any one of the MBA colleges, even if you are a scholar. It's not linked to a certain choice of college. So we'll get started, guys. The first thing that I want to talk about, just before we get into Skoll specifically, is a little bit about just the range of options of scholarships we have here at the school. Today's session is focused primarily on Skoll. Claire has joined us for that reason, and we'll go into a lot more detail about that scholarship shortly. But before we get there, I wanted to have just one slide showcasing the breadth of funding options that we have. You'll notice here a couple of different colored triangles on the slide. This is just denoting whether or not that scholarship has extra application requirements. Could be an essay, could be an interview, whether they are for certain regions or demographics or types of profiles that we have. Generally speaking, scholarships fall into one of two pots of money. One pot of money is an internal fund that we have. That's the Said Business School Foundation. You'll see it on the right-hand side of the screen there. That money is awarded to us by the school, by the board, and we are able to control who is awarded that money for internal kind of type of targets, regional variation, gender parity, those kind of diversity metrics that we're looking for. Some of them are specifically for women, some of them specifically are for certain parts of the world, some of them specifically are for academic merit. Academic merit often touches all of them to some level. The important thing to note about these scholarships, the foundation scholarships, is that there's no real extra requirements that you have to submit. There's no extra essay you have to submit. There's no interview you will have to do for the scholarship itself. As soon as you're admitted onto the program, you are automatically considered for these scholarships and will be in consideration for those scholarships for the remainder of the year that you are coming into the class. So, for example, if people out there in the audience today are thinking of applying on Wednesday, tomorrow for stage 1, ready for next September's intake, you will have a scholarship committee meet about you if you're admitted later this year. in stage one, there'll be a scholarships committee for stage one candidates. There will also be a scholarship committee for stage two and for stage three in January and March next year. But as a stage one candidate, your name will be brought back at every step of that process. So even if you're unsuccessful with a foundation scholarship in your stage that you've applied in, it's very likely that at some point later on in the year, you will be awarded some other level of funding. The other pot of money that we have is one where we have funds that are donated to us by external donors, external organizations. Skoll is an example of this. Often what you'll find with the externally funded scholarships is that there are some extra requirements. We will talk a little bit about what you have to do to apply for Skoll specifically in a slide's time, but know that there is an essay or some essay questions that you have to answer. There will be an interview process for Skoll. Often that is a two-stage process. Claire will go into more detail about this in a little while. But there are often things that you have to do on top of being admitted to the program itself. There are also application requirements for the funding too. One important thing to note here is not just for Skoll, but for any of the scholarships that require an essay, for example. The essay for your scholarship needs to be submitted at the same time as you submit your application for the program. So again, if you're applying tomorrow in stage one deadline, and you're looking to go for Skoll or for Laidlaw or for Weidenfeld-Hoffmann, one of the other named external donor scholarships, the essays for those scholarships will be needed at the same time as you submit your application for the program tomorrow as well. Roughly speaking, across all scholarships, both internal pot and external donor pot, we offer roughly 1 in 3 people on the MBA some form of scholarship, and the amount can range from a small £15,000 donation gift through to a full scholarship with some living expenses attached as well. The average amount of funding we offer amongst all of that scholar population is around £30,000. That's the average type of award that you might get, but the range can vary quite a lot from 15,000 all the way up to a full scholarship with some living expenses added on top of that. One thing on this slide, just to say, folks, is the best thing you can do is probably research the scholarship options that are available to you. You can find it on our website. I would recommend you take some time to read, what does my profile fit? Of the ones that I fit, what do I have to do to apply? Is it an internal scholarship with no extra essay? Is it an externally funded scholarship with an extra essay? What is the deadline for those essays? Is it the same as my application to the program? Almost definitely, yes, it will be. And just make sure that you have researched what options are available to you and you're not missing out on some funding because you didn't realize there was an essay. Research is your best friend in terms of funding options here at the school. And I would recommend that everyone take a little bit of time as they're getting ready to apply to the program to really understand which options are there for them. And more important than that, what do you have to do to be in consideration for those options? So moving on a little bit to Skoll specifically, Claire, if you don't mind, I'll invite you back onto camera and you can join the conversation here. While you do that, let me just see if there are any relevant questions that we have. Just one quick question that I will cover. This is a conversation we have quite a lot, a question that we have quite a lot. And I'll talk about it in a general term, but we'll talk about it in Skoll specifically as well. The question is there a difference in applying in stage 1 and stage 2? So if in general terms, no, not really. A lot of our scholarships aren't awarded until after stage 2. That's the January deadline this coming cycle. And so we'll wait to see who's been admitted in stage 1 and who's admitted in stage 2, and then we'll award the scholarship once we have those first 2 windows closed. There are some scholarships that are awarded straight away in stage 1. And so because of that, to an extent, I would say there is a little less funding available from those pots of money in stage 2, because some of that money will have been given out to stage 1 candidates. But using Skoll as an example specifically, you can see on the screen that applications have to be made by stage 2, that's January, and the submission, once that's done, the awarding of the scholarship won't happen until after that stage. So if you're going for Skoll specifically, there's no difference whatsoever between stage 1 and stage 2. Hopefully that answers the question, but thank you, keep them coming. So let's talk a little bit about that, Claire, if you don't mind. Let's say someone is applying in tomorrow's deadline in stage 1 and they're going for Skoll. Can you explain what happens from your side with regards to Are they awarded the scholarship? Well, no, we know that's not happening until after stage 2. So what happens to them in the interim, if you don't mind?
Yeah, thanks, Liam. Yes, so after stage 1, we have an internal selection process that begins then, where stage 1 applications are reviewed and decisions are made then by the committee here for those applications and those candidates that will then stay in the Skoll scholarship process, the application process. So if we are able to then get back to you to let you know if you are not going any further with the Skoll scholarship application, but we do take forward candidates who will then be reviewed with stage 2 applicants as well in the larger pool when our selection process then begins, where we then can see all applicants for the scholarship for the coming academic year. So it's almost like a kind of just a mini stage selection that happens after stage 1, where all those that generally meet the requirements stay in the process and then are assessed in the larger pool when we can see all the applicants from stage 2 as well. So if you've applied in stage 1, you will be updated once all the decisions have been, the offers have been made, and we've completed our selection process. You'll be updated as to whether you're staying in the Skoll scholarship process. And then if you're not, you obviously are then free to explore other funding options or make decisions as you need to. And if you are staying in, then it's a case of just sitting tight, and you will hear from us again once we have then reviewed all the applications from stage 1 and stage 2, which is a little bit later in our spring, usually around March time.
Great, thank you, Claire. So there'll be a question probably that someone is thinking in their minds that I'm not sure they've put it in the Q&A box yet. I can't see it, but I think people will be thinking it. If I'm applying in stage 1 and I get a place on the course, but I've applied for Skoll, but I'm not going to hear that. At best, I'll hear that I'm being retained until stage 2 happens, and then I'll be considered again. If you're thinking that and you're worried about, well, do I need to pay my deposit to secure my place in the MBA before I even hear back from the Skoll process? Because all I'll hear, the best news I'll get from stage 1 is that we are taking you forward into the next process, which is just retaining you on our books, so to speak, to then compare you with stage 2 candidates. We in the admissions side and the recruitment side, we can extend your deadline. If you say to us, thank you very much for the offer of a place on the course, I'm delighted, hopefully you'll be delighted, but I'm waiting to hear back from Skoll and I don't have any news yet other than just, I think I'm still being considered. Can I extend my deposit deadline to then pay in the spring, once I've heard either way from Skoll? Then the answer will always be yes, we can do that. So don't think I was going to go for stage 1, but I can't pay my deposit till I know I have funding, so I'll wait until stage 2. If stage 1, if you're ready to apply, then still apply in the next day or so, but just we can extend that deadline should you need to. So please don't worry about that if that's been on your mind, or if that has just kind of like popped up in your mind with regards to what Claire has just said about the process. Claire, can we talk a little bit about the further application? I mentioned earlier that this is a scholarship that does require some essay questions. Can you maybe highlight briefly for the people in the audience kind of what we're looking for? Can you share the essay questions? Are you happy to do that? They can be found on the website, guys, so they're not secret. You can go and look at them yourself. And maybe give us a bit of insight into what makes a strong candidate in terms of what the essay should be talking about, please.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, you can see a little bit on the slide that we have on the screen now, some information about the kind of candidates that we're looking for, and I'll come to those points and just say a little bit more to them now. In terms of the essay questions, there are 3 questions. 2 are slightly more kind of essay question. 1 is a little bit more focused on just financial need and understanding financial circumstances. So the first 2 questions are really an opportunity for you to tell your story. So to kind of demonstrate the work that you have been doing and a little bit about your understanding of the particular challenge that you are trying to address through your work. So the first question is really a kind of tell us about your social impact background, the work you've been doing, and the challenge that you have kind of been tackling or hoping to kind of tackle through your work. And we are looking for candidates and scholars that have ideally at least 3 years of experience of working within social impact and tackling a specific challenge as well. So that might be a social impact challenge, it might be an environmental impact challenge, but we want to see, and we're looking for a demonstration of a thread to your work. And that doesn't have to be that you've had your own venture for 3 years or you've been working in one role for 3 years, but that you have a focus to your work that kind of unites a lot of what you've been doing for at least three years. And that's really in the first question, we're looking for you to tell us about that and explain, just tell us your kind of professional background and why you're doing the work that you are. The second essay question is then digging a little deeper into your experience of the particular challenge again that you're looking at. You're looking at kind of tackling through your work. So here we're looking for just, do you have lived experience of this particular problem that you're addressing? How well do you understand it? And this is starting to get to again, the opportunity to talk about how much you understand your work within the system and looking at the kind of systemic change that your work is hoping to contribute to. So you kind of, it's those two questions together allow you to present your career to date and your work in social impact to date, and then just talk about your understanding and your the kind of depth and how well you position your work within the system that you're working in as well. And then the third question is then really around just telling us a little bit more about the financial need for the scholarship. This is a merit-based scholarship. However, we do hope to be able to certainly award the scholarship to those candidates where an MBA of the tuition, the course fees of an MBA are a significant burden. So it's just telling us a little bit more about your particular circumstances and the need for the full scholarship there. So it's those three essay questions, like Liam said, that are submitted at the same time as your MBA application. And it's on those essay questions, as well as your broader application, that the selection committee then bases their decisions. So those essay questions are reviewed, and that forms the foundation of how the decisions then are made at each selection process.
If I can just interrupt with a question, if you don't mind. One of the things that I often get spoken to or asked when I'm in conversations with candidates that are thinking about applying for scholars, do you have to be a founder of a social enterprise, or can you be working in an enterprise? Or do you have to be the person that started that enterprise, or can you be someone who's involved? If that makes sense? Yeah, no, it does. And great question. And kind of brings us to the points around the type of kind of the criteria we're looking for in our candidates. In short, you do not have to be a founder of a social venture to apply for the scholarship. When the scholarship was very first established, kind of 20 years ago now, it was very focused on founders of social organizations. However, as the term of social entrepreneurship has evolved and broadened, so has the criteria for the scholarship. So now, to the first point here, really, we're looking for candidates who are just very entrepreneurial in the way that they work. So that might well be that you have founded a social venture, and that's a very clear example of a kind of entrepreneurial action. However, we also, increasingly over the last kind of several cohorts of scholars, have had many scholars who have been intrapreneurial, so often working within organizations, either on have an impact role within an organization, and can demonstrate that they have brought a very entrepreneurial approach to their work. And that's basically kind of what we're looking for. We're looking for highly entrepreneurial people who have that kind of mindset and that approach to their work, but that does not have to be by just founding a venture. That can absolutely be by being intrapreneurial within an organization, and also in
probably within the last kind of few years as well, we do have scholars who have been working again at a kind of systems level, so have been very entrepreneurial in terms of building kind of like ecosystems around social impact work as well. So it's really more of an approach, I would say now. So when we talk about entrepreneurial action, it's actually that you can demonstrate that mindset of an entrepreneur, but you're bringing that in many different ways, either as an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, or a kind of systemspreneur, to have another term thrown out there. So you do not have to be a founder. Yeah, so hopefully that answers that question, which we do get quite often.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. One thing that I saw on the website recently, which I was interested in learning a bit more about, is this whole phrase, apprenticing with a problem. Can you talk a little bit about that maybe and explain to the audience what that means?
Yes, yeah. So that's really where we're looking for, again, scholars who have a really deep understanding and a knowledge of the particular problem that your work is involved in. So that might be that you have lived a particular challenge yourself, and it's from that you have then realized the need for a particular solution to that. So that might have resulted in you founding an organization. It might have resulted in you taking a certain career path within impact, because you've really lived that problem, and you have a deep understanding of some of the potential solutions to that. It might be that you have worked in the field for a very long time, or through an organization that has been tackling a particular challenge for a very long time. So it's really getting to just this, how well and how deeply do you understand the problem, and again, within the context of a system as well. So how kind of well do you understand what you're actually trying to tackle? Quite often, sometimes it's very easy to get fixed on a specific solution, and really we're looking for that kind of depth and breadth of understanding of that as well. So the depth of what the issue is, but also the breadth of it in terms of the systemic change that's needed, not just your solution, but where that solution sits in the whole landscape.
Thank you. So we've had a question come into the Q&A box, Claire, which I think is a good time to ask this one. I think I know the answer, but it'd be good to get your thoughts. The question is, can social work or impact relate to supporting rural livelihood through agriculture development for food, nutrition, and income generation? What would you say to that?
Yes. So let me go back to that question again, just so I can just get this. Can social work or impact relate? Absolutely, yes. So we, impact's a very broad term now. So we, and we purposefully kind of don't define impact very narrowly at the center either. So really, we look at impact as just any kind of work that is affecting positive social change. So yes, absolutely, in short.
That's fair. And just one quick question before I give you a bit of a break. There's a video on the next slide, guys, that I want to share with you. But before then, Claire, I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the Skoll scholarship that obviously there's an essay question or essay questions you have to answer, and then there's an interview process. Can you talk a little bit about the number of stages, roughly when in the year do the interviews happen? Are they online? Are they in person? Is it a panel interview? Is it a one-to-one interview? Lots of questions in there, I know, but if you can just give us a bit of a background on the interview steps, please.
Yeah, sure. So we have a selection process that begins in March. So as we kind of mentioned before, once stage 1 and stage 2 have closed, that's really when our selection process kicks off. And we have a couple of selection stages to that. We have a long listing and then a short listing, and candidates are kept up to date with those stages as they happen. If you do then make it to the interview stage, we have two stages. So we have a first stage where we are at that point interviewing probably 10 to 12 candidates. And then we invite around 6 to 8 candidates back for final interviews. They are all virtual, and they're with a selection panel that is made up of faculty, of Scholar alumni, and SBS staff. And those interviews really just allow us to get to know you more, get to know your work more. We ask in the final interview for a presentation on your work. So it's an opportunity for us to then just get to understand in depth your reasons for wanting to do this scholarship and your impact work to date. So those interviews, if you get to that round, are in April. And we would look to then be making final decisions on the scholarships in early May, usually. So the whole process altogether takes about 6 weeks from when stage 2 decisions are made in around March, when we start our process, to the kind of beginning of May. On the scholarship website, there is a timeline. So I do encourage you to go to that page. On the website, I think it's under how to apply, and scroll down. There is a timeline with the dates there, and they will be updated with the specific dates as they're confirmed. But it does give you a rough idea of the time frame that we're working to.
Great, thank you, Claire. Just a couple of quick questions for me to clear up. Take a break, have a little bit of a rest. Thank you for all the information. The question, do we have to apply for this in the round 1 application? No, let me just clarify that for this, if people join a little bit later, if I wasn't very clear, you need to apply no later than the January deadline, stage 2. You can apply in stage 1, you can apply in stage 2, but then if you apply in stage 3, Skoll will be no longer available to you. The deadline to apply for the scholarship is no later than January. It doesn't have to be stage 1, but it certainly has to be no later than stage 2. And then another question, which I think, Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, the question is it a must that the focus of the social enterprise be on environmental problems, or could it be any social challenge? I think it can be any social challenge. I'm sure Claire will interrupt me if that's not correct. It certainly doesn't have to always be environmental. No, not at all. Okay, guys, we're going to move on to the next slide. It's just it's a video about the Skoll scholarship. I'm going to hide my camera. Claire, feel free to turn your camera off as well, so that we're not cluttering up the screen. Let me go ahead and shift onto this one, and hopefully this will work for everybody. Please, if you can't hear the volume on this, guys, let me know in the Q&A as soon as you can, but it should be fine.
My journey started in 2003 when I was a volunteer in Ghana and Zambia for 2.5 years. I fell in love with the people, but saw how big the problem of development was. I was inspired by the opportunity to make a difference. My vision is to build a Pan-African digital bank that can create 1 million jobs and improve the financial health and well-being of 1 billion people.
My lab mission is to contribute to move impact investing from being a very small niche in the market to become mainstream without losing its core values. 9 years ago, I was working as a corporate lawyer in Latin America, and I wasn't quite happy with the dichotomy between corporate and pro bono, so I started SEED to blend them together.
I'm working for a world where people understand the information they need to make smart decisions about their lives. I call this the right to understand. So this is the campaign that tipped me over the edge. There's a huge mismatch between the complexity of the language that business and government used and the literacy levels of the audience, the people. So one day, I quit my job and started Claro.
I knew I needed the entrepreneurial and business skills to achieve the impact I wanted to make in Africa. That's why I applied for the Skoll Scholarship at the Oxford Business School. I couldn't believe it. I was going to Oxford on a full scholarship to study an MBA with a social impact focus.
I've been looking at the scholarship for 8 or 9 years, and when my company hit a big bump on the road and I realized I had to rethink my approach, that's when I applied for the scholarship. This is where I was when I got the call to say that I was accepted, and I was so happy. And 4 months later, I moved to Oxford with my family.
Oxford is a unique place that blends 800 years of history with a multicultural, diverse community.
Being here in Oxford, it's an immense privilege. Your mind is expanding all the time. You will never get another opportunity like this. It's like being at the center of the social impact universe.
Looking back, the Skoll Scholarship was my big break. It gave me so much confidence and credibility. I met my CFO in the MBA class. I met investors through the Skoll World Forum. The network is like the gift that keeps on giving.
If you're interested in the overlap between business and social impact, there's definitely no better place than Said Business School for you.
Every day, you have mind-blowing conversations. There's so much sharing and collaboration.
Skoll scholars are people who live lives of purpose that's embedded in their core DNA. They exist to make a difference in the world.
The world needs more leaders focused on creating a world that works for everyone. That's why we welcome change makers of all backgrounds from all around the world. If you're passionate about making a difference in the world and you have an idea that you want to grow, we encourage you to apply.
Okay, guys, so I wanted to give you a bit of an overview of some of the most recent scholars, a little bit about the scholarship itself. This slide actually is our existing scholars. They have been in the school now for 9 days, I think. So last Monday, just a week ago now, was their first day of launch. They're getting into their second week of launch, and then formal term will start for them this coming Monday. The QR code on the screen, just so you know, if you scan that, that will take you to the Skoll website. And as Claire mentioned before, please go and spend some time on there, talk about or look at the eligibility requirements that we've covered today, read more about the network that you'll have access to, some of the benefits of being one of the Skoll scholars at the school. All the information that you'll need is on that QR code on that website. Claire, if you don't mind, I'll invite you to come back and talk a little bit about the existing scholars. You don't have to talk about all of them. There are 5 of them on the screen here. That could be the rest of the session, but are there particular highlights of 1 or 2 of them that you'd like to pull out and tell the audience about today, please?
Sure, yeah, and I'll maybe just say a little bit about the network of scholars in general as well. It was, it came up in the video there, and what I would say is, as well as the financial opportunity that the Skoll Scholarship provides, what is as valuable, in some ways, if not more so, is the network of scholars, and that you then become a part of. So as Mike Quinn said there, in one of our Skoll scholars in the video, it is a network that keeps on giving. So I think with the scholarship now being more than 20 years old, if you like, there's real a huge amount of diversity and experience and knowledge within the alumni network of the scholars. And that's there for you as a resource, as a peer group, for you to really then, tap into, and you are a Skoll scholar for life. So you remain part of that network, and it's really a kind of endless resource to access. These are quite often, peers who have maybe faced the same challenges that you have. They've asked the same questions. They've something that you're grappling with right now. Someone else has probably been there before and can offer some really great advice. So it's a really, really rich, vibrant, active alumni network as well of almost 100 scholars now. And it's a global network. So there are some clusters of scholars in certain areas of the world, but really we almost have scholars in I think just across cities and geographies all over the world. So I would say it's as valuable as the financial opportunity of the scholarship as well. You can see here our 5 current scholars who have just arrived with us, and we are really just enjoying getting to know them more. They're actually, as it happens, all coming from founder backgrounds this year. But as I mentioned before, you don't have to be a founder. That's just the way that that this cohort has fallen. But we've had previous cohorts where we've had no founders, and it's been much more kind of entrepreneurial, or people who've been supporting ecosystems with an impact. But our scholars this year are kind of coming from backgrounds in EdTech. We have 3 of our scholars who are all working in EdTech. One of our scholars coming from an AgTech background, and then another scholar who's working in youth-to-youth development and mental health, supporting youth in mental health as well. So There is no sector that we particularly look to award scholarships to. It's really just about an impact career in its broadest sense, and that, like I said before, that we're looking for just any kind of career and work that is affecting positive social change, be that as a founder with your own venture or in education, right through to, you know, entrepreneurial or trying to build. We've had scholars who are supporting the building of impact ecosystems within Sudan, for example. So I would really encourage you to, like Liam said, scan the QR code. We have a really great profile page of our scholars. So you can see every scholar from every cohort over the years, and you can filter by geography, you can filter by cohort year, you can filter by sector. And you know, you will find yourself in there in some way. The scholarship is, you know, we have a really, really diverse group of people, and they, again, like I said, working across organizations, across ventures, across sectors. So it's really just about, when you apply, just telling us your impact career story, because you know, we have scholars who have kind of come from every background. So I really encourage you to familiarize yourself with some of our scholars. Many of our scholars are very open to being contacted as well, and they'll tell you a little bit about their experience either through the application process or once they're in residence in Oxford as well. But our scholars are very supportive and open to queries. So I would encourage you to, as well as listening to myself and Liam, to, you know, to get in touch with the scholars and get their perspective as well. You know, they've been in your shoes and thinking about an MBA, thinking about Skoll. So just, you know, hear from their side as well. But an amazing network, and you're also then part of the Skoll community in its broadest sense as well. So our scholars, you know, that is a very active community, but you are also then getting access to the Skoll Centre, and we have a broad network of visiting fellows, of researchers, of practitioners, who again are all coming from impact roles, but in very, again, very broad careers. So our scholars, you know, work closely with many of our affiliates that come into the centre and support the research and the programmatic work during the year. And we also have the network of the Skoll Foundation, which is our main funder. And again, there are opportunities through the Skoll Foundation and things like the Skoll World Forum that, as a Skoll scholar, you also get access to and become a part of. And it's all just, again, you know, an opportunity to really build your network within impact as you're looking at your MBA year specifically and how you want to build your pathway through that, but also then thinking post MBA, whatever your kind of career plans might be, whatever your next steps might be, you have access to a huge amount of knowledge within the scholar alumni community, and then broader through the centre and the Skoll Foundation as well. And I would just say, you know, one thing to note is that with the scholarship, we don't kind of attach any conditions to the scholarship. You know, there's no expectation that you have to have an exact plan when you finish the MBA or how you build your MBA year. You know, we, through the selection process, really, you know, our investment is in you as impact career professionals, and we are here to support you through the MBA year and beyond, to then decide and kind of carry on with your impact career as you wish to. So each scholar tends to have a very different objectives for the year. You know, some of our scholars know exactly what they want to step into after the MBA is completed, and we help support then the experience that they can have through the year to do that. Some of our other scholars come in and are using the year as a bit of a transitional year, maybe to step into developing a newer a new idea or switch roles within Impact slightly. So again, it can be a bit of an exploratory year, and we are here to support that too. And we've also had scholars come in with a very, very clear idea of what they want to do, and then during the year that changes entirely, because they maybe meet a fellow classmate and decide to develop a new idea, or just have a complete change of direction because of opportunities that might come up. So as the Skoll Centre, there are no expectations at the end of the scholarship that you take your career in a particular direction, or you don't have to report back to us, anything like that. Really, the investment is in you to carry on doing what you do and building your career. Still hopefully within Impact. Most of our scholars, I would say 98% of our scholars are still in Impact roles. But it's very much up to you to kind of be the protagonists of your year. And we're here to understand that with you and see how as a centre we can help you kind of build your bespoke journey through Impact, through your MBA year here. So yes, hopefully that's just a little bit about the network and the scholars, just to say that it's a very wide-ranging group of people. And even if you apply for the scholarship but are unsuccessful in getting it, I would say as the Skoll Centre and again as the Scholar Network, there are still many ways that you can engage with us, with our work, and with the network. So even if you are not a Skoll scholar, we are certainly open to still supporting your impact journey through the MBA. So I would still encourage you to apply for the scholarship if you meet the criteria, but still very much do engage with us if you end up joining the Oxford MBA, but not necessarily as a scholar. There are still plenty of ways that we can work with you.
Great, thank you, Claire. Guys, we're about 2 minutes away from beginning the formal Q&A section of the hour. We've set aside 15 minutes. We'll get through as many questions as we can. We'll get through as many questions as there are in the Q&A box. There are some in there already, and I'm keeping them there for now to bring back at the Q&A, so don't panic if we haven't answered your question yet. Before we get to that, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to say, and Claire's touched upon it a little bit in what she was just saying. There's almost two lenses you have to look through when you apply to the program and to the scholarship, because you might be very well suited for the Skoll scholarship, but your MBA application to the program still has to also make sense to the admissions committee for the MBA. So if you go back to those bullet points on a slide a few slides ago where it talked about who are we looking for, one of them is a clear demonstration of why the MBA is important to you in terms of your career development, maybe the development of your venture, how can you scale it and create even more impact. So when you're applying to the program and applying to the scholarship, try and look through both of those lenses almost at the same time. Am I a strong candidate for the scholarship? Yes, hopefully I am. Am I a strong candidate for the MBA? Yes, hopefully I am, because the process kind of means that Claire won't even see your application to the scholarship. Claire and her team won't see that if you have not been admitted onto the program first. Claire and her team will wait for my team and I to admit the people onto the program that we think are a good fit for the MBA in general. And then Claire will get access to those applications that have been successful to the program and have also applied to the scholarship. And that's when her and her team's shortlisting will take place. So it's not good enough, and it sounds quite harsh, guys, but it's the truth. It's not good enough to be good at one of those two profiles. If you're good for the MBA, but not a good fit for the scholarship, that might not go that well for you. If you're a good fit for the scholarship, but not a good fit for the MBA, you may not get admitted onto the program to begin with, and therefore be in Claire's sights when it comes to the shortlisting. So there's really kind of like a second job you have applying for this scholarship, and really for any other named scholarship. It's really the same, is how do you demonstrate your value to the program, and how do you demonstrate your value to the potential scholar community if you are selected for the funding. And that's kind of a second train of thought you have to have in the back of your mind when you start to, or when you carry on completing your application materials. I just wanted to raise that there. You have to tick both boxes. It's hard, but it's worth the effort. And for the people that you see on the screen, for the people that you saw in the video, and the people that we see coming to the cohort each year, They managed to do that extremely well, and they are very deserving of the scholarship, as I'm sure there are some people in the audience today that would fit that criteria too. So just before we get into the Q&A, just a little bit of an overview of what we've talked about already. Research your options. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give. We're talking about general funding now, not just Skoll. You'll see a link on the screen there. Please feel free to jot that down or visit that page. That will be almost like a search engine for all the scholarships and funding options we have here at the school. You'll be able to have a look a little bit at there. We have some scholarships that are specific to the business school. There are also some scholarships that are linked to the colleges of Oxford. So again, outside of Skoll now, if you're thinking of other funding options, there could be some college scholarships that are on offer to members of that college. And so if you apply for their scholarship, then that will be attached to that college. You will be a member of that college. And that is done outside of the business school decision-making process. So it's not just business school scholarships and funding options that you have open to you. There's my team's email address on the screen there. If you have any questions at all that we haven't covered today or that we're not about to cover in the Q&A, something that might be a bit more specific to you individually and your profile, feel free to send those through to us on email. Claire has very generously in the past taken some time out of her busy schedule here and there to have conversations with candidates on their way in to making the application. I would like to temper people's expectations there and say Claire is a very busy lady, and that might always be an option. So please don't take it personally if we're unable to arrange that for you. In general, all I would say about the scholarship decision-making process, again, outside of Skoll now, is that what normally happens is if you're admitted onto the program, you'll find out at a set date of the year, a few weeks after you've been interviewed. Once we know who's been admitted onto the program, the scholarship committee will then convene and meet about a week later, and then there'll be a separate notification, a separate message in your application portal about whether or not you've been successful with some funding. And we're talking about the internal decisions that we make ourselves, not Skoll. Claire has very eloquently talked about the process and notification process for Skoll specifically. So that's kind of all the information that we had for you today, folks. I'm going to keep my camera on, but stop sharing my screen. I'll leave it up for maybe 20, 30 more seconds to make sure people have had a chance to jot down the email address or the URL to go and look for the scholarships and funding. We have had a little bit of a flurry of questions come into the Q&A box. So thank you again for sending those through. Claire, let me get you started with one, if you don't mind. The question is, hello back. I have a venture, but wondering how big, for example, number of employees, or how impactful it has to be considered qualified. Are there any parameters, or what are the other parameters? Claire, can you talk a little bit about, does it have to be a certain size? Does it have to have been scaled already, or can it kind of be a very small venture to begin with? What's your opinion on that? What do you think?
Yeah, so there's no specific size in terms of employee numbers or revenue, etc., that we ask for. However, what we do want to see some demonstration of a level of scaling to begin with, and certainly potential for scale. So we want to see that this is more than is past the ideation stage. That there's real momentum to your business, to your work. So if in this context, if it's actually about a venture, there's no specific size. However, we do want to see that it is past early stage development and has a trajectory, has a level, has had impact already, and with the potential for real scale.
Thank you. One question from somebody who may have been here a year ago, or maybe it's hypothetical. It's an anonymous question, so I'm not quite sure who it is, but it says, what is the probability and chance to be selected for the scholarship this year if a candidate applied in the previous year but was not selected?
Yeah, I mean, so some of our scholars have actually become scholars on the second application. So just really to say that every time you apply, you're assessed against the pool that you're applying with and be a part of that year. So it may be that you are successful one year in a year that you weren't otherwise, because it is very much dependent on the pool that you're being assessed against. It also, you may well, and we would probably expect in those 12 or 24 months that have passed since you last applied, that you've gained more experience, that you maybe have more that you can now demonstrate and talk to in your essay questions around your impact career as well. So a mixture of probably developing your experience, your career in impact, that's often made the difference with some of our scholars that then go on to be successful. And also it's dependent entirely on the pool that you're in that year as well.
Thank you. There's a couple that I'll take just quickly, Claire. So one is, can I get a full scholarship for the 1+1 MBA on Skoll? And the answer is no, you can't. The only scholarship that you have that covers both years of the 1+1 is the Pershing Square Scholarship. So if you're writing that question in the audience, look out for Pershing Square. And following on from that, and Claire, maybe you can input on this one a little bit. I'll talk about it in general terms first. If I apply for multiple scholarships, will it create a bad impression on each of the applications? So no, what you'll find if you research the scholarships at Oxford at Said is that there are some scholarships that have a little bit of crossover. For example, at the top of my head, some aspect of what the Laidlaw organization looks for can overlap quite well with some of what Claire and her team are looking for at Skoll. And it's not unheard of that we might have a joint scholar. We have had that in the past, I believe. Claire can talk more about that a little bit. In general terms, it doesn't really matter how many scholarships you apply for, and guys, you should be applying for as many as you qualify for. That is my biggest piece of advice here, because only 1 in 3 people get a scholarship. And so if you think, well, I'm eligible for 3 or 4 of them, which one do I pick to go for? Well, you go for all of them. It will not have any kind of negative impact at all on the outcome of your application if you've applied for multiple scholarships, because there's a good chance that actually your profile, there'll be parts of your profile that are attractive to each one of those donors, each one of those foundations, each one of those kind of schemes. And so it's good to cast your net as far and wide as possible. Claire, would you agree? Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, 100%. And to give an example, we have a cohort of 5 scholars this year, as you saw, and you might have noticed on the slide previously, we said we have funding for up to 4 scholars. And that is due to co-funding this year with Laidlaw. So if you meet the criteria for more than 1 scholarship, like Liam said, absolutely kind of go for the ones where you meet the criteria, and it allows us to stretch our funding as well and enable more scholarships where we can co-fund and partner with other scholarships. We do so, those conversations happen at the school, and 2 of our Skoll scholars this year also hold Laidlaw scholarships as well. So it allows us to stretch scholarship funding. So yes, support everything Liam said.
Great, thank you. And maybe what time is it? Maybe one final question for you, Claire, then I've got a couple that I'll finish with. How important are references for the scholarship itself?
So we, for the Skoll scholarship, we ask for additional references to your MBA. You'll provide references as part of your MBA application. We do ask for references as part of your scholarship application as well. However, that is only to candidates who are selected for the final interview stage. So when you're just applying to begin with in general, you don't need to submit references at that stage. We do collect them from candidates as the selection process starts. We only take up the references though for candidates who get to the final interview. And you can provide the same referees that you have provided in your main MBA application, or you may want to give us other referees that maybe speak to your impact work in a different way, or it kind of will complement the references that you have already submitted. But to note, that is only for candidates who get to the final interview stage.
Great, thank you, Claire. I've had a couple of questions that I'll take. They're both about the same thing. It says, is there an age limit to apply? Is there an age restriction for the scholarship? And the short answer is no. It goes back to what I was saying before. You'll be considered for the scholarship if you're admitted onto the program and you've applied for the scholarship, obviously. So the more pertinent question might be, is there an age limit for the program? Because that will be the barrier that gets you over the line for the scholarship. And the answer to that is also no. So we have an average age on the MBA of about 29 years old, but the age range is quite wide. People 23, 24 coming in with just a couple of years of experience, all the way through to mid to late 30s in some instances. We had a lady who's just graduated on last year's class. They finished about 3 weeks ago. She turned 41 when she was on the program. So there's no upper age limit really at all. my team and I in the recruitment and admissions area will have a conversation with you around what are you expecting from your program? What kind of conversations do you want to have with your peers? If you're towards the upper end of that age limit or that age range, then most people on the class will be less experienced than you. And so the question would be, are you learning as much from your colleagues and classmates than you would if you were maybe on a different program? The executive MBA, for example, is a little bit older in terms of average age, a little bit more experienced. You might be able to learn more from your peers there rather than the full-time MBA. But fundamentally, it's your decision. If you think the 1 year full-time MBA, fully embedded in the school, living here in Oxford, is the right thing for you at this moment in your life, then that's really all we care about. As long as you can answer those questions in a compelling way, then you can be admitted onto the program. And if you're admitted onto the program, no matter how old you are, you can then be considered for the scholarship, provided you've applied for the scholarship. And let's not forget that, quite an important step. So short answer, no, there's no age limit at all for the scholarship, and there's no age limit at all for the program itself. And that's probably all of the questions that we had that are general enough to really talk about openly with the audience today. For the people that have sent slightly more specific questions, I'm sorry we weren't able to get to them. Please do use that email address that I shared on that final slide if you'd like to send those questions through. My team and I would be happy to respond. Claire, thank you so much for your time. It's been really great to have your insight and your expertise on here. And to the audience that are out there listening, thank you for joining. Thank you for your engagement, and thank you for your questions. And hopefully we'll see your application for the MBA and your application for the scholarship come through in the next few weeks and months. And good luck with that. And Claire, anything else from you before we head off?
No, thanks, Liam, and thanks for the opportunity to chat to you all now and spend this time with you. If you do have specific questions, like Liam said, I'm very happy to connect with you outside of this time. Please just drop me. I'm sure Liam's team can put you in touch with me if you have, again, specific questions to your particular career, your experience to date, etc. Very happy to answer those.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Good luck with your applications, and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.